Hey, everybody. Welcome to Simple Songwriting Episode 2. Today, we are talking about a really awesome song that Aubrey picked out called Hell's Bells. You've probably heard it. Aubrey?
Yeah. Um, so we picked Hell's Bells, I think, for a couple of reasons, or at least in my mind, I thought it was good for a couple of reasons. One, I feel like vast majority of people have at least heard of AC/DC or know who AC/DC is.
I think if you
Um,
haven't even heard of AC/DC, like, you need to just stop listening to this. You need to go listen to AC/DC. Like, you
yeah,
got, yeah, that's like a
especially if you
music
own
must.
a especially if you own an AC/DC shirt.
Yeah, that's actually a whole separate can of worms.
Yes, that's another episode.
The
Um,
posers, the Kardashians.
yes, but
Um,
it was important for us, I think, to kind of pick a relatively simple song to kind of address, I think, some important basic knowledge of song structures that people may or may not be aware of. I mean, even I couldn't tell you the definition, like the quote unquote textbook definition of like a chorus or a pre-chorus or a bridge or like all those kinds of things.
mhm.
Our goals were to pick a simple song that uh, we could kind of address, I would say, like the basics song structure elements in most
Yeah,
songs, I would say.
yeah. I mean, I think this song is like the textbook definition of like it is a pretty normal song. Like just it is good. I mean, the structure, just to make it really basic, is like it is intro, verse, pre-chorus, chorus, verse, pre-chorus, chorus, guitar solo, chorus. It's pretty much as simple as it gets. And so yeah, we figured for the first episode just to set some like nice foundational like how this show will go and what we want to talk about, like starting with something easy and relatively simple is a good way to do it. And actually to show that just because something is simple doesn't necessarily mean bad. I think sometimes like happens where it's like, oh, it's too basic. But no, this song is perfect for like it takes the basics and it just runs with them and it just nails them.
Yeah, even Angus himself, which is for people who maybe aren't familiar with ACDC is the lead guitarist of the band. I watched an interview with him many, many years ago on YouTube, and he was talking about how basically some journalist or somebody was accusing them of being like writing like 10 albums that sound the same. At this point, I think they had 13 or 14 studio albums out, and
Mm-hmm.
Angus said, he was like, insert expletive here, that guy. Um, we've written
Yeah.
14 albums that sound the same. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So
We
I think
get your facts
ACDC,
straight.
right? Yeah, he is basically. I think ACDC. I don't want to say that they necessarily follow the same methods for all their albums. Maybe they do, but they kind of seem to stay in their box to a certain extent, but are really good in their box.
Yeah, I mean, AC/DC are basically synonymous with classic rock. I mean, I think this song in particular and the album it comes from, because it comes from the Back in Black album, it is like, in my opinion, when you think classic rock, like this is it. Like this is textbook classic rock. And so, yeah, like why, if that's what they love doing and they nailed it and they're as big as they are and they love it, I mean, hey, you know,
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
right. And so, but that's the thing is today we'll talk about why these basics work really well and how ACDC kind of makes them work well and what's appealing about them. We'll dive into that a little bit. Before we talk about it, we thought it'd be fun to just take a quick a couple minutes and just talk about kind of what we've been listening to, just like general what's going on. I know for me, the big thing is I just really wanted to spend a few minutes talking about Houdini by Eminem. I'm really loving that song right now. Uh, yeah, it's super cool. What do you think of it?
I enjoyed it. It's definitely, I think we talked about with our first episode, like, I prefer, like, the Slim Shady era of
I was
Eminem,
thinking that. Yeah.
and this is definitely like, "Oh, guess who's back?"
It's like it is exactly. I was laughing about that because I was like, Aubrey literally said that last time.
Yes.
I'm missing that old. But I think the music video was hilarious. Like,
I did
you
not
know,
know there was a music video. I'm gonna have to watch this
what?
after that. I
Oh,
know, didn't know.
Aubrey, you
You didn't
have to
send
go
it to
watch.
me.
Come on, man.
I'm a
No,
busy man.
all right, you have to watch the music video. The music video is the best part. Yeah. Anyway, that song is great. Eminem is totally in his bag. He's just killing it. It's really fun. And I will say this, it's really nice seeing that song blow up too. We're recording this on a Wednesday, 5 days after it came out. It's at like 45 million views. It's been at the number one trending on YouTube for a while. I think for me, sometimes when like for example, Avenged Sevenfold will come out with a music video and it gets like 2 million views, but it's like super artsy and all that. I'm like, okay, I love that y'all did that, but like, I'm not saying that popularity means anything. It's fine, but I like seeing the W. I like seeing Eminem like really just kicking ass. So anyway, yeah, that song's been a lot of fun. We're not going to dive into that, but I've just been really enjoying
Yeah.
that. Have you heard
Um,
any interesting things lately, or anything else on that?
I mostly, for me, this past week or so, I've been kind of in a musical rut. Haven't really been able to find something that I've just latched on to. I listen to a lot of Houdini.
Hmm.
My kid also really enjoys the Eminem song, but also All That Remains. I don't know if you heard, released a new single, I think a week before the Houdini came out,
I
called
think I did
Divine.
hear that.
Let me
Is
see what it's
is
called.
that the first single with Jason Richardson as their guitarist?
Maybe if I didn't know they had a lineup change.
Their guitarist
Yeah,
died,
so
dude.
okay, didn't know that either.
What? Yeah, all that remains. Their guitarist. I can't remember his name. I want to. It started with an O, like Oscar or Ollie or something like that.
Hmm.
But their guitarist passed away like 4 years ago. I want to say. And I mean,
Uh,
he was a god. Like it was their
he's
lead
yeah.
guitarist.
I mean,
He's
he's. I mean, Guitar Hero 6. I mean, that song made
yeah.
me. You
Oh,
know,
yeah. Six, 2 weeks, Chiron. Those songs.
yeah,
Just.
two
I
weeks
remember trying to
slaps.
learn the. I remember trying to learn the 2 week solo, and I was like, "What is he doing?" Yeah, no, he passed away, and so then Jason Richardson stepped in. I think I did listen to that single, but I didn't. I don't know. I kind of like. I think I was at work or something. I just listened to a little bit of it, and then I honestly kind of forgot. So maybe I'll have to go back and listen to that.
It's kind of, to me, it's like, I don't want to say a return to form, but it has a lot of nostalgia feels to earlier All That Remains off their first like two or three albums.
Yeah.
Um, which I like. I haven't been a fan as much of the most recent two albums or so of All That Remains.
Hmm.
Just not 100% for me.
I felt like that too. I think they had one album. I can't remember the name of it. Like I think it was called The Order of Things, but it just had like a big circle on the front, like a mechanical robot looking circle. And I think that one
Yeah,
was pretty cool. There were some cool songs on there, but the next like two or three, I felt the same. I just didn't really. They didn't do anything for me.
yeah. Definitely when I think of like All That Remains in their prime, I think of their 2006 album, The Fall of Ideals, and their 2008 album, Overcome, which is,
Yeah,
um, to me,
yeah.
peak All That
Over,
Remains.
Overcome is definitely like I agree with you. That is the big one. That is like that's just a amazing front to back. That I love that album. Um, yeah, well, cool. So that's our little quick music update. Unless you got anything else, you want to just dive right in?
Yeah, no, sounds good. Um, so to me, I don't know if you have any special stories about the song, but to me, when I think of ACDC, um, this album in particular kind of holds, I guess, in a weird way, a special place in my musical life journey, whatever.
Hmm.
Like to the point, like I remember. I don't know if you remember the old FYE store in Conyers.
I don't.
Okay, I mean, it was that doesn't matter, but this was like my first like step into rock and roll, and I was probably a
Uh,
little too young to
yeah.
probably be listening. I don't remember exactly how old I was. Probably around 8 or 9.
Yeah.
Um, and my dad was like, "Get this album." I'm like, "Okay, cool." Like, whatever. My mom
Totally.
bought it for me, and my parents are divorced, so not that that matters. But to speak to the next part of the story is
Show me
that
the heart.
yeah, we was at my mom's black Rav4, which she had for way too long.
Yeah, I know.
Uh, yeah, exactly. Yeah. um, I like remember to this day like my mom sliding in the CD player, sitting in the back of the Rav4 after a soccer game or a soccer practice, and like just hearing the intro to the song, and like it just like the bell like struck a chord with me, no pun intended.
Yeah.
Um, and then like again, not knowing the name of the song or anything, which is obviously Hell's Bells, and it says hell a lot, and my mom was not very enthused with my dad about the fact that he recommended this album. Um,
Classic.
yeah,
Pissing the
but
parents off.
honestly, yeah, yeah. But honestly, it was just like the whole album's great.
Yeah.
But just like I have a very distinct memory of hearing Hell's Bells for the first time.
Yeah.
Um, so I think, I think I'm a little bit more familiar and I'm a little bit more of an AC/DC fan than you are, but you do have the advantage of you've actually had the experience of seeing them live, where I have not.
Yeah. So
Um,
actually, okay, so I don't have a special story for AC/DC. AC/DC for me was actually kind of like, you know, my intro to rock was Linkin Park. And it took me a while to get around to like catching up on like, and I didn't get into Linkin Park until like 7th or 8th grade. So I was way behind on rock music. I had to play catch up. And eventually I got around to listening to AC/DC and I was like, yo, these guys rock. But I don't have like a personal story. But I do have a personal story with that AC/DC show that you might not have ever heard actually.
oh,
Um,
I'm here for it.
so there was one time, and we're gonna get to the song, but there was one time where uh, it was the show. I think it was me, Andrew, and Ivan went to see Avenged Sevenfold in Augusta. Did you know about that?
I know about that. I could not go because it was in Augusta. My dad or my mom was like, "It's the school night." Blah blah blah
Yeah.
blah blah blah.
Oh yeah. And so my mom decided to get drunk the night before, and so she was hungover. And this was the first time I would have seen Avenged Sevenfold. And my dad, God bless him, he begged me, please, Cam, like, please go, like, go another time. Like, just don't. I'll do anything. We can pick another show to go to, but your mom, your mom's not feeling well. And I straight up, I was like, no, nope. I don't ask for much. We're going to this show. And so we actually ended up having to go to. So you can say what you want, but I made mom go to that show. But the thing is my dad was like, here's the thing. There's ACDC's coming into town like in 2 weeks. I'll get us some front row tickets to that or something. And I was like, nope. I want to see Avenged Sevenfold. I don't want to see ACDC. I want to see Avenged Sevenfold. Turns out, so we went and saw Avenged Sevenfold. We had to leave early because it was getting late. But my dad was like, I guess he already had the tickets to ACDC, which is why he was trying to do that. That's why he was saying that. And so yeah, he was like, we ended up going to ACDC in Atlanta at the big stadium, and we were sitting front row. So I got to see ACDC front row, Angus Young stripping and all that. Like it was crazy. It was a great show. So
Yeah, I
yeah.
had tickets to see them when they were on tour, but Brian, literally, I was the next show. Atlanta was the next show, and then Brian Johnson had his hearing issues.
Oh
So they
yeah.
had to like reschedule and scrap everything. And then, of course, um, Axel stepped in for him, like after they
And then
rescheduled everything, and that's not ACDC. Which and Axel did great. I'm not throwing shade at him,
and you were like,
but
no.
I was like, absolutely not. One, because I'm not a big Guns N' Roses fan, but like ACDC is not ACDC.
Yeah.
Um,
No,
in
I
my
agree.
opinion, without Brian Johnston, and that's actually even kind of like a weird, messed up statement for me to say because I actually prefer the Bon Scott era of ACDC more than I do the Brian Johnson era of ACDC.
Mhm. See,
But
I
I
would
really
actually
hate Axl Rose.
I love Axel, not as a person, but as a singer. And I would say I actually disagree. I prefer the Bon Scott, or not Bon Scott. The sorry, what's the new singer?
Brian Johnson.
Brian Johnson. Yeah, I prefer Brian Johnson. Um, so yeah. Uh, okay. Um, cool. Well, yeah, I think that's a nice little intro. So yeah, I have seen ACDC live. They were awesome. They just they kick ass. They just rock. They are super energetic. I mean, they're old too. That's the thing. Like they're actually
They,
pretty old, and like
they
they still
are
got the
like
energy.
they are rock and roll.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So this song, fun thing about this song is it is the intro to Back in Black. It is the first song on the album. So this you know, the bell intro, everything that happens, it is what leads into what is probably one of the greatest rock albums of all time. Um, so yeah, I figured we should just give our personal thoughts on the song. What do you think of this song in particular? Like, what are your personal feelings about this song?
Um, so I think the song is huge for a lot of reasons. This is the first album since Bon Scott's death. So the first album with Brian Johnson, and it's their seventh studio album.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, like you got to come out swinging for the fences. I feel like if I'm Brian Johnson, I'm a little scared. You know,
Yeah.
like I mean, Bon Scott, I think was a great front man, and he's got
Oh
some big
yeah.
shoes to fill. But
Absolutely.
I think that this song is great. I mean, like it's. I don't want to say it's nothing. There's not a whole lot of razzle dazzle, but what it does so well, and I think it does a really good job of setting the tone, not only as a song but for the album as a whole.
Hmm. Yeah, that's pretty much how I feel about it too. I've always thought that this song for ACDC, this is like one of their more theatrical songs. It's a lot of fun. It's just one of those songs that's like, you know, it's a little dark, it's a little evil, but like not too evil where, you know, the Satanists or the it's not causing like satanic panic or anything. It's just a kind of a dark, fun, like being bad type of song, like Hell's Bells. And so it's just it's fun and it's a great rock song. I think the intro is super cool. The solo's great, the lyrics are great. I mean, it's just all around like a classic, awesome rock song. So yeah, and I think again, like I said, for ACDC specifically, the more theatrical side, the fun, like you know, with the bell and you know, you can just imagine like the rain pouring and the thunder and all of that. Like it's just cool. It's a really cool song. Um, so speaking of that, like why don't we just okay, so let's get into it. So we're gonna go what we're gonna do
Yeah.
now that we've kind of given our like personal feelings, we're going to we're gonna go in chronological order and just go through the structure of the song and you know
Now I think
dissect
it's
it
a
a
good
little
time to
bit.
mention. Sorry. Now I would say it's a good time, probably, if you haven't listened to the song for whatever reason. We do like kind of talk about these songs as if you already have listened to them. So now would be a good time to go listen to the song, or maybe just
Yeah.
refresh your brain a little bit before we break it down.
Yeah, definitely. Like you should go listen to it. I mean, it's a great song. You're gonna have fun. You're gonna be in a good mood anyway. We were just listening to it before we started this episode, and yeah, it's just awesome. So yeah, but anyway, so kicking it off, the song starts off with a bell, like just a really awesome church bell. What do you think of that, Aubrey?
I mean, again, kind of like what I said before. I think it sets the freaking tone, man. Like
Hmm.
I hear that bell, and I'm like, oh man, I feel like some shit's about to go down. You know?
Yeah, No, that it's
Um,
really I think it's really cool because it's like you have songs that'll start off with these like big, like orchestras and strings or choirs or something like this, but really this song just has a bell. Like aside from the rock instruments like guitar, drums, bass, it just has this bell. And so there's something about like the purity of it. It's like that's awesome, It,
yeah,
it just gets
I
you
mean,
going.
it stands out on its own. I mean, not to be cheesy, but like it kind of, you know, I guess in a sense, like shins, like kind of gives me goosebumps, kind of thing.
Oh yeah, I think that's like what it's supposed to do. And then I mean, obviously the song is called Hell's Bells, so there's gotta it makes sense with this with the vibe of the song. But another thing I want to point out, so I've got the song structure mapped out here with timestamps and stuff. The bell
Mhm.
goes on for 20 seconds. And so something that we're again getting more into like the nature of songwriting, like the interesting thing about a song and movies kind of deal with this too is that you need to be aware of time, like how much time you're spending on something, because if the bell lasted for a minute and a half, you just get bored. Like can you imagine just sitting there listening to that bell ring for a minute and a half, you
Yeah,
know?
you can only listen to the bell so much before you're kind of like, okay, I need something else.
Exactly. And I think that that idea of pacing is really, if you're if you're writing songs or even if you're just thinking about the songs, like think about they really had to be careful because imagine if the bell only lasted 5 seconds. I mean, it might have been cool. It might not have taken away from it too much, but something about having it go for like I feel like they picked the perfect amount of time, like
I was
20
gonna say
seconds.
time. Yeah,
Yeah, like they nailed it. And it's just the bell. It builds things up, but right when it starts to get maybe like, okay, this is getting boring. What's happening? The guitar comes in
yeah,
and we start to get going. Um and so I think this intro here, I've got a couple notes on it because the this intro builds for about I don't think vocals come in until a minute and 27 seconds. So we've got a minute and a half of instrumentation happening here, and I think that they
yeah.
use every second of it. So with this guitar, let's talk about that guitar riff for a second because I think the guitar riff is actually super underrated too.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Um, I think like Bell to me kind of sets like this serious, somber kind of tone, and then
Mhm.
you get this guitar intro. It's like slow, and but it has this element of like okay, like very seriousness to it, like something's about to happen, kind of thing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the
Um,
guitar riff is like again, it's rock. It sounds like a rock guitar, but it's fun, but it also is slow and dark, and it's kind of everything that this song is meant to be, and it captures it really well. Like this slower song for AC/DC, but also like dark and fun. So yeah,
I think is also worth noting out. It's very simple.
it's super simple. The tab for it, I learned it a long time ago, and I remember thinking like it sounds like there's a lot of different notes being played, but there's actually not. They're just being played in a really interesting way that makes it uh, just sound appealing. It's a very simple song, and the whole song kind of follows the structure, or not the structure, the chord progression that it sets, like that. Dun, 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 dun. And so just that progression there continues on into the verse where it's like da na na da na na da 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 na 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 na. So yeah, like it's great. It sets the tone, it sets the chord progression that happens, and it's just awesome. It's an awesome little guitar part. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah.
I think uh, going back to how simple it is, it's simple enough to where that even I can play it. So that was bonus points for me as a young child,
Yeah.
and now as an adult, honestly. But
Yeah, and it's funny too because when you think about like simple songs that to play on guitar, obviously like "Smoke on the Water" comes to mind. I don't think this is one of them. I don't think this is the type of song that people think of as being like that cliche like song that the beginner plays in Guitar Center, you know. But it could be, and maybe it should be more, because it's great. It's a great riff. Um, so I wanted to talk real quick. So yeah, this intro goes on for about a minute and a half. One of the things that my big notes for it is that it is deceptively complicated what's happening here. So I'm gonna get into just a little bit of like theory and mix stuff here, or like rhythmic stuff. Um, and this is for like anyone listening, and you too, Aubrey, if you want to just like next time you listen to it, try to pay attention to some of this stuff. So the first thing that I noted when the guitar comes in and as the riff plays out, every single time the riff repeats up until the drums come in. So the drums really kick off with a beat at like the 1 minute mark. So guitar comes in at 20 seconds, drums kick off at a minute. So for 40 seconds, when the guitar riff is repeating, every single time it repeats, another guitar track comes in. And I don't know if you've ever noticed that. So when you're listening to the song, when you're listening to the track, the guitar riff starts in your right ear. So imagine like you're listening on headphones. The first guitar comes in on your right ear. Once it plays through once, a second guitar comes in with just like a chord ringing out in your left ear. And then the third time, a third guitar comes in and beefs it up a little bit. And then a fourth. And I think by the time it finally ends and it comes into the drum beat, like the drums start their beat, we've got like 5 or 6 guitar tracks playing at once. Which is just, it's a really cool mixing technique and a really cool mixing trick to like build things up and like actually get the to build, basically, because you can't do it live. You can't have like 6 guitarists doing something like that live, but you can on the track, you know. And it's actually something that they used to do a lot with like classic rock songs. Like Guns N' Roses did this too. Metallica did it, where they would layer guitar tracks. They would just record the same thing. And what I mean when I'm saying like layering guitar tracks, for people who don't know, is you record your guitar part, right? So you just sit down, you record it in the studio, but then you just record it again. You record the exact same part again, and then you just you play them together at the same time on the recording to make it sound a little beefier or more full. And in the 80s, in the 70s and 80s, it was very normal to record the same guitar part, I mean, honestly, like 5 or 6 times, and to just place it in different, like place one in your left headphone and then another one in your right headphone. And then you can pick like kind of in between the left and the right when you're mixing. And so you put one in the middle, you put another one kind of halfway to the left and halfway to the right, until finally you've got like 5 guitar tracks playing, but they're all spread out along the headphones, the stereo spectrum, and it just sounds huge. So this is a great example of like using that technique of like, the guitar starts off and it's only in your right ear if you're listening to it on headphones, but then slowly it's very full, and by the time all 5 guitars are playing, the drums kick in, and it's just awesome. Like you've got this really huge sound, but it happened really gradually. So that was one of my favorite notes that I took when I was listening to that intro. Um,
A lot of it's like an onion, lots of layers there.
exactly, it is like an onion. No, and
My
I
kid,
think it's. Mhm. What were we saying?
I was just gonna say, my kid's been watching a lot of Shrek lately, so it's relatable.
Didn't it just come out on like Amazon or something?
I don't know. I'm sure it just came out on something, but I have watched Shrek at
Yeah,
least 5 times a day for the past 5 days.
it's become that kind of a movie, like The Lion King. I used to watch The Lion King nonstop. Um, Yeah, so that's like a little mixing trick for like how do we build something up? We'll just keep, just record the guitar many many times, and then just slowly add guitars to it. Um, and then I think the only other like music theory note that I had on this was the bell. So when you have music, like when you're thinking, and Aubrey, you'll actually know some about this because you have drumming experience. Um,
Hmm.
the bell actually doesn't come in on the 1, it comes in on the 2. And so you have this really cool thing, or this cool dynamic, where the guitar starts kind of in between bells. Like it's you can hear it when the guitar comes in. It's like it comes in for like a second or two, and then the bell hits like in the middle of the guitar part because the bell is on the two. Um,
Hmm.
and so the cymbals also come in on the two and the four, which are where the snare hits. And again, if you don't know music, this might be a little esoteric, but I just want to at least say it for the people who do. Um, you create almost like this crazy little polyrhythmic thing going on where the guitar is playing, in the correct measure, like the 1 2 3 4 measure, but the bell is on the two, the cymbal is on the two and the four, and then by the time the drums come in, when the drums really kick off at like the 1 minute mark, you're almost like, whoa, like that's not where I thought the one was. Like it almost kind of takes you by surprise. At least it took me by surprise, but it really works. Like it sets into this groove, and you're like, oh, like that's what the groove is. That's just a fun little thing. Essentially, for anybody who doesn't know, when I'm talking like the 1 2 3 4, most music, the timing for most music is 4 4, which means that there's 4 beats in every measure. Maybe I'm getting a little too deep, but like essentially music is time, and we use the measures to determine where we are at in the composition. And so when you're counting your music, it's like 1 2 3 4. uh most people know that just from like dancing or gymnastics or something. 1 2 3 4, 2 2 3 4, and that's how you keep track. And so the whole thing, it starts on one. So for the bell, you would think when it comes in, like that's your one, like that's your baseline, but they chose to put it on the two, which is just kind of interesting to me. They would have done that very purposefully, and it's just a simple thing, but because it comes in on the two, it creates this weird like offset to the guitar, um, so that it's still, to me, it makes it seem more mysterious and off-putting, and you don't really feel comfortable in the song until the drums come in. So that all of that is to say that was a creative choice that they made that I really like, and that's why maybe that intro, when you're listening
I
to
was
it, it
gonna
sounds
say,
so. What were you gonna
yeah,
say?
I was gonna say it's like we talked about the timing before, um, not just like the length of things, but also the time in which things come. That I think in the way that they allow them like, well, no, I was about to say something dumb, but
uh, it's all good.
like, well, like the timing of everything, and ACDC actually does this, I think, a lot. Like even though they sound very basic and I think kind of stay in their box, if you listen to like the catalog that ACDC has to offer, a
Mhm.
lot. I can't think of a bunch of examples off the top of my head, um, but there's a lot of things that are very subtle with their timing that I think maybe a lot of people kind of don't get. That are kind of like, oh, that's actually really impressive. Um,
Yeah, I, I totally agree, and that's actually something that we'll talk like all throughout this song. There's these little moments that are like, for example, and in fact, maybe this can be a good like place where we talk about how they actually get into the verse of the song. So the drums kick in, and then at 118, they stop playing the main riff and they get into like the verse riff, and they've got this 10-second little section that it's a bridge, really. It's like a short bridge into the verse.
so
So the
as
Mhm.
I was gonna say, perhaps just before you go into a deep dive on bridge to verse and all those kind of things,
Yeah, yeah.
what is, I guess, maybe not necessarily super technical definition of a bridge or a verse, but like just
Mhm.
kind of explain a verse and or a bridge to us common folk.
Yeah, definitely. So a verse, let's start with a verse. So this comes from like poetry, essentially. I think that's like the where it actually comes from. And the idea behind a verse is that this is where like you tell the story, kind of. This is where you get to say what you want to say, so to speak. Um, and then you have a pre-chorus, Or actually, no, let's just talk about verses and choruses. So, yeah, the verse is like this is you saying what you want to say. This is the story. This is the theme. Whatever you've got to say, that's where you say it. The chorus, again, I don't know all the history behind this, but essentially in a song, the chorus is, I've always viewed it as the point of the song. Like, what is this song? And that's usually what the chorus is, or what the chorus tells you. And you can always flip that. You can make something like the chorus can be ironic. The chorus can be, like in storytelling, you have your like an unreliable narrator or something. So you can have like your storyteller in a song be an unreliable narrator. And then there's all these different things that you can do. Like you can have multiple chorus sections. I think a good example would be A Little Piece of Heaven by Avenged Sevenfold. There's like 3 or 4 parts that you could almost consider to be the chorus because there's so many different sections in that song, right? But in essence, the chorus is like, that's the point. That's what you're listening to. So the chorus in this song is the part where they say, "Hell's bells, yeah, hell's bells." Like that's the chorus. That's what you're listening to the song for, is that big hell's bells moment. So yeah, the verse though is where you get to say more lyrics. That's where he comes in saying like, "I'm rolling thunder, I'm pouring rain, I'm coming on like a hurricane." Like that is the point. So essentially think of it like this: the verse is where you get to tell your story. The chorus is kind of like the point of the story or the point of the song, you know? So, and then you can have like a pre-chorus section, which they do in this song as well, where it's kind of, well, it bridges the verse to the chorus. And maybe I shouldn't say the word bridge, but it is a connecting,
It gets
right?
you. It's the
Let's just
intro
get,
to the chorus.
yeah. um, yeah, so the pre-chorus is essentially like a lead-in to the chorus. It is a separate section from the verse. The verse is usually, honestly, the verses are usually a little bit more low-key than the chorus. The verses are usually kind of like the calm section where you get to say what you want to say. The pre-chorus is like building up the tension because, spoiler alert, that's what most music is it's the build-up and the release of tension in various ways. But so you got the verse that's like kind of the verse in this song is actually a little bit of a release of tension because the whole intro builds and builds and builds and builds and builds. And then we have this like, we kind of come into the verse and we can settle in and relax and like vibe for a little bit. And then we get into the pre-chorus, and that's where we can, okay, the tension's building again. And then we get into this big old chorus, and it's like, that is kind of the climax. Again, that's like a big moment, and it's epic, and you got all this energy. And then when you come back, and when you're listening to the song, like pay attention to how the song is making you feel and what's happening and what the song does when it moves from the chorus to back into the verse. Because when it goes from like the first chorus to the second verse, there's this moment of like, ooh, like you can take a breath, like you can take a break. And like, okay, then the second verse starts kicking off because there actually is a bridge from the chorus to the second verse as well. And that's kind of what I mean. Okay, so real quick, before we get into that, let's talk about a bridge. A bridge is, think of it like a small connecting section between more significant parts of the song. So I'll take, if you go to 2 minutes and 21 seconds, there is a 9-second bridge from the first chorus into the second verse. And the goal of that bridge is to be very relaxed. You just had this big old chorus where you were, if you're watching it live, you're screaming hell's bells and you're just going crazy. And then you get this moment of like, whoo, man, that was awesome. And then the second verse kicks off for real. So it's like this little break, but they specifically wrote that section in there for that purpose. And so when you're thinking like, okay, I'm writing a song, I'm putting a song together, they could have just come straight from the chorus right into the verse. And a lot of songs do that. They could have just no bridge whatsoever, just boom, right into it. But they had the musical knowledge and awareness of like how a song flows to say, okay, we got to give them like just a quick break. 10, it's not even 10 seconds. I think it's only 9 seconds after the first chorus of like no vocals. The drums are really simple. The guitars are just kind of holding a note out. We're just taking a second and to regroup, and then the verse starts. The second verse starts at 2 minutes and 30 seconds. So yeah, that's kind of a overview of like the main sections of a song, like your verse, your pre-chorus, your chorus, and then the bridge. Um, that was a lot. So yeah, what do you think about all that, Aubrey?
I feel like I learned a lot and not a lot at the same time. um, it's
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, you know, I, I it's I'm looking at
Well,
the
that's
song
just.
in a way that I've never really looked at it before through
Mhm.
like through us doing this, and it's really interesting because I'm like, oh, like looking at your notes of like verse one, I'm like, you can, then it's like as you explain it, and I look at the lyrics and the timestamps, like this makes so much sense.
Yeah,
Um,
that's
I think
kind of the. Sorry, you go ahead.
as someone, I was gonna say, as someone again who has a slight musical background with a slight, you know, theory background, but a lot of my musical writing and I guess I'm gonna say in quotation marks expertise is solely off of feel.
Mhm.
Um, and so I feel like I see how you break it down or have it broken down and trying to apply that. I'm now trying to do that to other songs, and I think it's just something that's like my brain's gonna take it's gonna take practice. You know what I'm saying?
No, yeah,
Um,
definitely. And I think like I just want to note like that's kind of again going back to like when I was thinking about this show, there is something to be said about understanding these elements and like understanding how songs work. Because what you need to get, what you should understand, like listener and you Aubrey too, is like they know what this is. They know what they're doing because they
yeah,
have to write new guitar parts and new drum parts and new things for every single section. Like they know what they're doing. They might not
yeah,
know all the theory behind it. Like ACDC, I don't think that they're like theoretical masters, but they know song structure and they sat in there and said, "Ooh, yeah, like leave that little break there because that's nice." And then come back into the verse. Like they plan every element of the song out. And I feel like when, in today's world, it feels like if you try to break a song down like this and almost like snap people out of the emotional aspect, it's almost like a like taboo. It's like, no, I don't want to think about music like this. I just want to be along for the ride. And I'm like, but there's something so valuable about like if you think about it like rationally, you can actually appreciate when artists do things that are interesting with the structure. You just have that much more appreciation when you're aware of it. That's always been my
yeah,
perspective, at least. um
yeah. No, for sure. I definitely like just even like I said, looking at your notes before we did this, I was like, oh
mhm,
man, this is like there's like things that I know I've listened to the song like a bajillion times over the past you know
mhm.
15, 20 years or so, and like I haven't listened to it in a
Yeah.
while, but I was like, oh man, like Cam, pointing out this little thing that I've never heard or paid attention to before. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and the truth is that's actually like a compliment to the songwriters too, if they can make it they can make it seamless and they can make it flow really well, and the song just moves smoothly. You know, it can be now. There's something to be said about like an artist that will purposefully make something jarring, and that's a whole separate episode. But in general, like it's a compliment to a songwriter to make a song that flows from section to section seamlessly, and so you don't even really need to think about it too much. But then I think there's value in being able to understand what's happening here and what you're actually listening to, and where you're at in the song, and all of that. So anyway, so all of that's kind of like a bit overview of like verse, pre-chorus, chorus, but that kind of let's come back to that bridge into the verse. um so yeah, you've got that intro part. It plays for a minute and a half with the bell. At some point the bell cuts out, and we get to okay, we've been jamming on this big iconic guitar riff for a minute and a half, and then everything simplifies and you can feel it when it happens. It's at a a minute and 18 seconds, and the drums tighten up. They close the hi-hat, so the drums are, and then the guitars actually tighten up too, to a simpler version of the main riff. So the guitars go to this riff that's like down 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 down. um and then that's it. That's the bridge. That is the bridge from the intro to the verse, and then we get into the verse and vocals come in. And I think this is like, well, like we were talking about, this is Brian's big moment. Like, what does this new guy sound like? um what do you think first time you heard AC/DC vocals?
Um,
Do you remember?
I mean, I think okay. Full disclaimer. I so again, I was very young here. I was probably like 8 or 9.
Mhm.
And I wasn't super into music at this point in my life. I was just getting there. Um,
Yeah.
I think that when I a lot of times when I listen to music, I really don't pay a lot of attention to the vocals. So
Mhm.
much so to the point, and I mentioned this earlier to you of like, holy crap, I've heard this song a million times and I got so many lyrics wrong.
Yeah. So
Now that
I'm
I've read through the
notorious.
lyrics,
See, I'm
um,
notorious for that, man. I get lyrics messed up so often. I don't pay attention to the vocals. I'm always listening to the guitars and drums and stuff.
yes. I mean, Brian Johnson has a very, I think, distinct voice. Like, if you lined up, like, did a lineup of people, but just their voice recordings, 99 out of 100% people are going to be able to pick out Brian Johnson's voice.
Yeah.
I think. Um,
Yeah.
he has a very unique voice. Um, it's kind of
Yeah.
like
What were you saying?
like I guess I was gonna say I guess I would kind of he kind of like reminds me as like a sick old man, like kind of flimmy. Like he's just always kind of flimmy to me.
Yeah,
If
which
that
is,
makes
it's funny because
sense.
I feel like that's actually worked to his benefit as he's gotten older.
Yes,
Like,
yes. Now that
yeah,
ACDC is now in their prime.
yeah, he somehow manages to have like a very nasally sound, but with power and energy and like fullness, which is,
Yeah,
I don't know, like it's the
Eh,
most, it's the craziest
it's one of those
voice.
things that it shouldn't work, but like he knows how to make it work for whatever reason.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think like in general, it is like the voice of classic rock. It is just, I mean, he just sounds ridiculous. I mean, like if you take out like the nostalgia from it, and you just think like if you ever heard somebody talk to you like that, like "Hi, how you doing?" Like it's
Yeah.
just the most, it's the most ridiculous voice, but like it
You'd
just
be like, "What's wrong with
works
this person?"
right. But something about it, it's like just this. I mean, I don't know. It's the wildest thing. I don't know as much about vocal techniques and stuff, but so I don't know if he's messing his vocal cords up
That's
when he does that.
that's natural talent, baby. That's not technique.
Right? It's just crazy what he does. So yeah, I mean, I think when he comes into this song, I'm rolling thunder. Like, hey, he comes in strong and he comes in powerful. Yeah, so the verse lyrics, let's look at those real quick. It's I'm a rolling thunder, pouring rain. I'm coming on like a hurricane. My lightning's flashing across the sky. You're only young, but you're gonna die. Like,
Yeah.
dang, you
I
know?
mean, again, he's swinging for the fences here, I feel like. And it's really
Oh yeah.
funny or interesting, I think, because I was trying to think of these lyrics almost as a poem outside of context from the musical standpoint,
Hmm.
and kind of without the music behind them, they don't really hit or feel the same. If that, like, you know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah. No,
Like,
like
if you were to just read this in a poetry book, you'd be like, huh, okay, like
it's funny. Something I tell my singer all the time is because he likes to just geek out over lyrics, and he'll spend weeks just working on lyrics. And I'm like, dude, you're not a poet, you're a musician. You got to get in there and sing it. You know, there's a difference. I think you know, poetry's cool, putting the words together is cool, but something about music where you actually have to say them, you have to deliver them and nail it. It adds a whole new element to it, you know. And so yeah, these lyrics, I mean, they're pretty normal. I'm a rolling thunder, pouring rain. I'm coming on like a hurricane. It's like, yeah, those are fine. Whatever, those are fine words. But singing it with that energy and that power, and after having that big old build up and everything,
Yeah,
like and something I would point out just from like a lyrical standpoint, it's really cool that they start the song off like that because it's imagery. Like they start the song off with imagery. So you immediately get this image of like a dark thunderstorm that's raging and probably causing the bell to swing. And so again, they know how to create that atmosphere and like that theatrical like atmosphere essentially. Like they just nail it there. My lightning's flashing across the sky. You're only young, but you're gonna die. And it's like the foreboding ominousness, but none of it is like none of it actually sounds like how do I say it? Like none of it actually sounds evil. It doesn't sound like they actually want to kill people. It sounds like fun. It's just fun lyrics, you know? Does that make sense? Like,
so yeah, I can get behind that, but I wonder if that's more of a generational time thing because of like what we're used to now. I like to make the analogy, you probably heard me say it before, of like you know, leaning more into like the heavy metal or the hard rock stuff of like what's heavy
mhm,
to you and what's heavy to somebody else. It's going to vary because it's dependent upon like the weight or the
mhm,
heaviness that you're used to. I feel like, and I could be wrong, but like
mhm.
I think at a time the thing that should not be by Metallica was probably like the heaviest thing
Yeah.
around when that came out. Whereas today, I feel like musically, it's just kind of like almost easy listening in the hard rock, heavy metal community. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually a good point you bring up because it's very true. You know, when you look back at like the first Black Sabbath, like the song Black Sabbath by Black Sabbath, like that was, I mean, that was like, oh God, what is this? You know, and you had like I've read stories about like orchestras where they'd play like dissonant notes and people were fainting. They just couldn't
Well,
conceive.
I mean,
And
even going back further, of like the Beatles were like the definition of rock and roll. Like, you know, like that was like Black Sabbath when the Beatles were a thing. You know what I'm saying? And then
yeah,
Elvis Presley, the same thing. Like Elvis Presley was like super controversial. Where again, today's standards, the Beatles and Elvis are just kind of like, oh, okay, you know.
they're like traditional. They're the
Right.
safe ones.
They're
Like
now like the classic rocky, like, you know, Beatles are like
if you're
want to go
heavy,
down as one of the greatest musical groups ever.
if your heaviest artist is Elvis, you're a prude. Like you know, um, it,
Yeah, that's a hot take, but yes.
what? I'm just saying. It's like maybe prude's the wrong word. It's more of just like you know, you get what I mean. I'm just joking, but like it's one of those things where I get what you're saying. Like the standards for heaviness and what's raunchy and all of that change, but yeah, I think in this song in general and when they wrote it, kind of the you know it's funny they came from Australia, right? Yeah, Australia,
Yeah,
and I think this was you know this song and album came out in 1980, and so I think you know the 80s, especially compared to the 70s, were a little bit darker, and I think that it was the perfect time to come out with something like this that pushed the you know your parents it pushed your
push the
parents buttons a
envelope.
little bit
I mean, it pushed
and
my mom's buttons, and that was the early
yeah
2000s.
exactly. So yeah, it's interesting. It's yeah, it's an interesting thing to think about, like how the standards for lyrics have changed. Because now we have like WAP on top 40, right? Like
Yes.
yeah, that Megan the Stallion, Cardi B, all of that. Don't you just love it? Don't you love where music's
I
at
mean,
now?
hey, you know, to be fair, I do think WAP is a banger. I'm not gonna lie.
WAP, I you know, I think I'm just
And
tired of it. I think I'm tired of stuff like that. I'm not s we'll do an episode on that at some point about, like,
yeah,
you
I think
know,
there's a lot of artistic things that we could discuss in WAP that are actually pretty interesting.
I would totally agree, but I would also say that overall, like, I don't think the song has a lot of artistic merit. I think that there's artful things that are done and really intelligent musical things that happen in that song, and they make a lot of good choices musically. But overall, I don't think it's
That's
empty. I think it's
that's not
empty.
the song that gets put on the fridge.
Yeah. What?
I,
Oh.
like it's like when you got an A, you'd be like, "Look, ma," and then like she'd put it on the fridge. That's not the song that you'd put on the fridge if your kid brought it to you.
Yeah, say, "Oh, that's beautiful, honey." Well, maybe that, because isn't the whole meme with the fridge is like the picture isn't actually good. You're just doing it to make that person feel good. So maybe it is the song you'd put on the fridge.
It might depend on your parents. How about that?
Yeah, that makes more sense. Okay, so yeah, the verse. You get into the verse. I want to point out something too, a little dynamic between the vocals and the instruments. All of the instruments here are super tight. Like the guitars are dun 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 na na na, the down down. The drums, they've closed the hi hat on the drums. Everything's very low key, and they do that. That's a musical thing that you would do in order to make room for the vocals. So all of the instruments are low key and kind of settled back into the background, but they're still there. Obviously, they're still playing, but you give the vocals time to shine, especially for the verse, because that's when the vocals first come in. The instruments just got the first minute and a half of the song to do their thing. Give the vocals time to shine. And the reason I say that is because then you come into the pre-chorus, and what happens when you get into the pre-chorus is you're building to the chorus. That's the goal here. But you don't want to just, give it all away immediately. You don't want to just go full blast. So the way they do that in the pre-chorus is with the guitars. The guitars start playing more intensely, but the drums in general keep doing the same thing. So next time you're listening to it, so just to be clear, the pre-chorus starts at 1 minute 45 seconds, and the lyrics start with like, "I won't take no prisoners, won't spare no lives, nobody's putting up a fight," you know. And so the guitars start playing these really big sounds, like really big chords, while the drums keep playing the same thing in general. And that's a simple way to like it. When you're thinking about a rock band, you got your drums, your bass, your guitar, and your vocals. If the vocals are already singing, I mean, they could have added layers onto the vocals, but they didn't on this song, actually, at least not. The vocals are one track. There's only one track for the vocals up into the chorus where they have gang vocals. So the reason I'm saying that is so that you understand that there's just one vocal track going. So they chose not to add any background vocals or anything in the pre-chorus. So then you look at your other three elements: your guitar, your bass, and your drums. The bass is going to be pretty consistent no matter what. I mean, unless it decides to cut out totally, the bass is consistent. So your guitar and drums are the main drivers of like the intensity of the song. And so in this case, the drums decided to stay more low key, while the guitars decided to play more extravagant stuff, bigger chords and such. And so you get this build up in the pre-chorus. Um, and then real quick, the next thing that I wanted to point out is that the guitars actually do like a quick little like I wouldn't call it a key change. It's more of like a chord change. But when you're listening to the pre-chorus halfway through, because it's like, "I won't take no prisoners, won't spare no lives, nobody's putting up a fight. I got my bell, I'm gonna take you to hell." Like that right there, they actually step up in the chords. They go up and change. It's the first time in the whole song that they've actually broken out of the original chord progression. And so it's a really nice step up, and you can feel that change happen. Like, "I got my bell, I'm gonna take you to hell. I'm gonna get you, Satan, get you, hell's bells." And then when they go into the chorus, because they took that step up in the pre chorus, they actually just come right back down to where they were before. but it sounds like this awesome drop into the chorus. Um, so yeah, that's kind of a brief explanation of what's going on in the pre-chorus. Uh, Aubrey, you ever paid any attention to any of that? I'm gonna drink some water real quick.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I just paused so you could edit out the I'm going to drink some water part if you wanted to.
Ah,
So
okay.
I definitely recognize um, the ascension as you were
Mhm.
talking about. My brain doesn't go to key change or going up like a step or half a step or anything like that, which is, I think that's stuff we can talk about in another episode to be a little bit
Yeah,
more technical. Um, but it's kind of one of those things of like, again, I'm like, oh, my brain recognizes like, oh yes, we are not in the same uh
art section.
progression slash like frequency tonally speaking.
Oh yeah, yeah.
um and then there is that kind of, I really like to describe it as like we're actually just coming back to where we
Hmm.
were before, but it feels like a shift in a sense because of the ascension just before it.
Exactly, and that's again like the big thing with this episode is that is taking like simple things and really just you can apply them really well, and that's one of the most like brilliant things. And actually them doing that, what they did there with that little step up in the pre-chorus is extremely common. Of Metallica does it in Inner Sandman actually. Um, right before the chorus, they do the exact same thing. I think the exact same progression too, where they just go up just a little bit, and then you know it because they go up, it sounds because they go up when they come back down into the chorus, it sounds so impactful. It sounds like boom, like you just smash down, but you're just right back where you were before. Um, and so actually so with that said, let's talk about coming from that pre-chorus into the chorus and all the things that they do to make that chorus work, make that drop work, because I think this is really important. Like thinking about a drop like that, because nowadays when we say the words drop, you either think of like a metalcore drop like into a breakdown or like an EDM drop, and it's essentially the same thing, that buildup of tension and then the release. But I actually, controversial take, I don't like metal breakdowns, and I don't really like EDM drops either because I think that they're kind of these. Yeah, I know. Yeah, yep. I'm gonna say that. I, I stand by it because when you understand how music works and how it is this like build up and release of tension, like when I hear those things, when I hear a metal breakdown, it's effective. I get it, and an EDM drop is effective as well. But it's like drugs. It's like a drug, right? Where you can blast your serotonin if you just take some like LSD or something. But it's not actually as rewarding as doing as like real serotonin that you get from doing things that are like rewarding. It's sort of like an artificial blast of that. And so the EDM and the metal breakdowns are kind of like that. Like when you hear in EDM music like da 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 da, oh wow 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 wow, like it's just that build up of tension, release of tension. And once you think about it like that, I'm not trying to ruin EDM for music for anybody, but like from my perspective, what ACDC does here with this pre-chorus, just going up in that one little step and then coming back down is so much more subtle, but also way more interesting and like timeless. And with the lyrics and the guitar section, the guitar riff and everything, it's like there's so much more quality to that, like artistic merit to that than you know, ooh, ow. Like, okay. So,
I am team breakdown. Uh, but I
yeah.
think that your drug analogy was actually kind of great. Um, in the sense of like, I feel like the stakes he have to keep getting raised for breakdowns or drops. Um, in the sense of like,
Yeah.
I think like early metalcore type stuff, like Asking Alexandria and a lot of the other Warped Tour bands that had their breakdowns, like uh now I think in order to get any type of excitement from a breakdown or a drop or something like that, like I have to go to like the realm of Slaughter to Prevail or Lorna Shores because I just like I
Yeah.
want that level up.
And see, that's the thing. To me, that's why I use the drug analogy, because to me, it feels like a race to the bottom. You know, how different or ridiculous or crazy can we make our breakdown? What's going to make our breakdown stand out from the thousands of breakdowns that came before it? And in my mind, I'm like, when you look at the best songs, like the most timeless songs, and even like your favorite songs, when you think about like, and even for the listener, not just you, Aubrey, but like your listener, you think about what songs are your favorite songs, like all time. I don't think many people choose songs that do that. Like, maybe I'm not saying they don't, fair enough, but like most of the greatest songs can accomplish that energy shift in a more subtle artistic way. And that's kind of always been my biggest problem with the breakdowns is once you recognize what it is, like, oh, they're building up to the breakdown. Oh, here's the
It
breakdown.
gets predictable.
Yeah, it's the definite. It is the definition of predictable, but kind of coming back to like what we were talking about earlier about, are you actually analyzing what you're listening to? Do you know what you're listening to, like from a rational perspective? Are you thinking about it, or are you just kind of being taken along for the ride? And I think for me, at some point, I hit a point where I was like, yo, it's the same every time. Like, you're just building the tension and releasing the tension, and breakdowns are cool. They can have some of the coolest guitar parts, and just nutso guitar riffs, and especially nowadays with all the technology that we've got, you can have some crazy breakdowns. But in my opinion, it's never as good as an actual composition that you know knows how to do that naturally and in a way that flows and vibes, and so yeah, that's
I
that
think like
controversial take, but
yeah, like breakdowns are kind of like your one night stand. You know,
right. Yeah,
they serve its
exactly.
purpose, and then like I would agree. I don't think a lot of people love the songs. Like I can't just listen to like a breakdown song passively. Like if I'm listening to a song with like a breakdown or a drop or something, it's because like I want to feel something or like
Mhm.
get going kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. To me, the break, like stuff like that, breakdowns and drops, they are like junk food. They're like candy. They're really nice in the moment. They always sound cool. Like I will say this, they all sound great. Like they sound sweet. They're
They don't
super
all sound
cool.
great.
Well, fair enough. But in general, most bands that are at a high enough like level and are doing breakdowns, the breakdowns like mix wise, sonically, they sound cool. The problem is that, again, like candy or like the drugs and all that, they're empty. There's nothing really. Once it wears off, it's like, oh, okay, well, now what am I doing? And that is the flaw, in my opinion. And so when we're talking about like kind of bringing it back to Hell's Bells, when we're talking about this moment of like, you know, really what we've been building to for the first 2 minutes of this song, because the first chorus starts at 2 minutes and 3 seconds roughly. So we've now had this 2 minute build up to this moment, really, uh, and it works perfectly. I mean, it's this perfect drop into the chorus where on the one at the very beginning of the chorus you have the first, they go back to the original guitar riff from the beginning of the song, the so you're coming back to that. You have the drums actually hit like the big cymbals. So for the past minute, the drums have just been going like and you have this big moment of like with the drums. um and then the vocals, we actually get background, like I mentioned earlier, you get the background layered vocals going in the back saying like Hell's Bells, and you can just hear it. They probably took the band and just put them in a room with a microphone, and they just told them all to shout Hell's Bells for you know 30 minutes and got a whole bunch of takes, and then just layered those takes to make it sound like a big old crowd of people saying Hell's Bells. And then lastly, the icing on top is the lead vocal. Brian shouting it too with his, because he's mixed differently. The background vocals sound like they're in the background and they're to make the listener want to sing along. But Brian comes in and is, like, and it it kills. Like it just sounds great. And so again, like kind of like your vegetables or exercise, it might be boring listening to a bell for 20 seconds, and then you might think it's even more boring listening to just this slow guitar riff for a minute, and then like, okay, we're at the verse, and then we're at the pre-chorus, and now before the chorus even comes in, the song is already longer than most songs, on the top 40 today, being at like 2 minutes. But because of that time that you spent building up and getting into it and getting into the energy of the song, when it finally crashes down into that chorus, it's just that much more satisfying. So yeah, that's why that is in summary, that's pretty much why I'm not super big on the breakdowns. They sound great, but they're hollow musically. So, but yeah,
But they serve
what
their
do you think?
purpose.
They serve their purpose, but I just, they're always just kind of, they all serve the same purpose: build up
Yeah, they do.
tension, release the tension. And it's like, all right, cool, whatever. What do you think of this chorus though, Aubrey?
Um, I mean, it's a chorus. Yeah, I don't. I think it. I think in a weird way, not to just repeat myself, it serves
Mhm.
its purpose. Not a whole lot of razzle and dazzle. It's just there, right? It makes sense.
Yeah.
It's catchy. I think it gets the audience to sing along with it, which is, I think, the purpose of a lot of choruses.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it does its job.
Yeah, I think this chorus is super bare bones. It's actually amazing how little is going on in this chorus. It's just the intro guitar riff. The drums are hitting cymbals kind of throughout, but it's still just playing that. Um, the vocals obviously are just hitting the hell's bells, every time the guitar riff repeats. But then I think maybe the most, like, kind of the interesting part is that in between those big hell's bells, he's actually like kind of just riffing, yeah, hell's bells, yeah, got me ringing hell's bells, my temperature's
Yeah,
high, hell's, so you can feel like it feels like he got in the booth, in the vocal booth, and was just having a blast, just saying
yeah,
whatever. And that kind of adds to the energy of the song. So yeah, I agree. There's actually not too much to say about this chorus that we haven't already said about other parts, because it is just, there's not a lot going on, but that's what makes it good. It's simple. It's very, it knows what to do. It's very stripped down, and it works really well. Um, so yeah, so coming out of that chorus, though, the chorus actually ends with kind of these big chords, um, and then comes into a short little bridge that leads back into the second verse. We already kind of talked about this bridge earlier, but it's just a 8 seconds, after, because like I said, we had 2 minutes of build up to this big chorus, and then okay, let's just take a quick breather. We relax, and then we just come right back into the verse. Um, and the truth is like the next, let's see, the next minute of the song is the exact same. It's just another verse, another
just
pre-chorus, and then
yeah.
another chorus.
They
Yeah,
kind of copy
it's
and paste a little bit.
no, they do, for real. It's very well. Actually, I think he does do slightly different lyrics in the second
He
chorus.
does.
Yeah, but again, that's not. I mean, just a few little words here and there, but in general, it's all pretty much the same. I mean, the lyrics are different. Let's see. The second verse, it's "I'll give you black sensations up and down your spine. If you're into
Which can we
evil,
can we
mine."
can we
Yeah.
talk about that line? Going back to things I've heard wrong a million times listening to the song. First of all, I want to say I love the verse. This is like the verse to me stands out on this song, not lyrically, musically. Like I just feel
Hmm.
like I want to use the word groovy, but
Hmm.
I feel like that's not really a great descriptor. But
Do
like
you mean
I feel
the
like it's
melodically, the melody of the
mm,
vocals?
probably that's probably the technically correct word, but it's just kind of got like this nice little like melody to it, I guess, is what we're gonna do. Not that I know the exact definition of melody, but we're gonna say melody. And it kind of
Okay, so
like
here, let's hold on real
makes
quick.
me, yeah,
Let's talk about melody real quick. So here's what a melody is. A melody is a series of notes in a specific rhythm. And that's kind of
then
it.
yes.
Like it's a very loose term. It's different from like a rhythm because a rhythm is like it doesn't have notes. A rhythm is just a rhythm. So you could like the rhythm of this part is, you know, da 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 da. You know, I'll give you black sensations up and down your spine. Well, that's actually not even the rhythm. It's hard to do that.
I was gonna say.
Yeah, that's not the rhythm. But yeah, never mind. That was bad. But here's the thing: the rhythm is just the series of the notes. So like the rhythm of the guitar part, for example, is da 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 da. It's a pretty cool
And the
rhythm.
melody, so the melody would be, I give you black sensations up and down your spine, but the rhythm, like you said, just to kind of connect some puzzle pieces there.
Mhm.
Okay.
The okay. So wait. So the melody. Okay, so you've got the notes that are being hit, and then the
Hmm.
rhythm of the notes. So let's use the intro riff again. So the
Hmm.
rhythm of the intro is da 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 da, and then the notes are the da na 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 na. Or I'm gonna sing the notes in the rhythm, but
Right.
you could sing these notes out of rhythm like da na 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 na
Right.
na
Right.
na
Right.
na
Right.
na. You know, but when you combine those notes with a specific rhythm, na 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 na, that creates a
Okay.
melody.
Yes. Yes. I'm on board now.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, I think this is actually outside of like the intro, my second favorite part of the song.
Hmm.
Um, and I just like the way that he's like, I'll give you black sensations up and down your spine, just like kind of resonates with me for some reason. I just feel like it's a nice little change of pace the way he emphasizes things in this
Yeah,
verse.
he does that little like up and down your spine, something like that,
Yeah.
right? Uh, if you're into evil, you're a friend of mine. Like it's
Mm.
yeah, he's I don't think I got that quite right, but that's the thing. Like he's saying it with like all of this character. He makes it sound really seamless and like smooth because he's a great singer. He's an amazing singer, and so like his melody and that's the cool thing about vocals too is like you can use the melody to emphasize the words, you know, and have like just that extra layer of that's why Eminem is so great because he does everything. He can do all of it at once. But yeah,
Yeah.
no, what you're hearing is him using like these really interesting melodies. You know, I can't remember how exactly he says this. Hold on, actually, let me pull it up real quick.
For what
Let me,
the verse?
yeah, I don't think it'll play in the
Yeah,
speakers. Don't
I
forget.
know it. I know it. It's I'll give you black sensations up and down your spine.
Yeah,
If you're into evil, you have your, I can't read it because you're clicked on it. But if you're into evil, you're a friend of mine.
yeah. So there you go. Like he's kind of, if you're into evil, like that little quick jump of lyrics, like saying those words fast, but then kind of you're a friend of mine. Like he can kind of then he slows down again. Like though that's good melody. Like that's very good melodically because he's got these bursts of energy, but then he smooths it back out again. And so yeah, I mean he's just brilliant at it and works perfectly. All of the instruments are playing very simple stuff, so he's able to really like kind of do his thing. He's almost like
Yeah,
honestly he's
lean into it.
soloing. He's essentially just soloing over the verse, but with vocals. So he can just kind of do what he wants. And Michael Jackson's really good about that too. Like Michael Jackson just does whatever he wants over a beat, you know.
Yeah.
So
Um, I also just think that I don't. So my lyric mess up here is I thought it said vast sensations up and down your spine. I don't know what a black sensation up and down your spine is. That's interesting to me. Um,
yep, that's interesting.
I I do like the "if you're into evil, you're a friend of mine" lyric. That's I just think is interesting, and I think the because if your good's on the left, then I'm sticking to the right. I just think that's like creative.
Yeah, no, I like that's where, in my opinion, the song kind of that's where it shows itself as not really being truly evil. Cause like in one line, you're saying like, if you're evil, you're my friend, you know, or you know
Right.
what I mean? And so it's like we're pals, like and everyone who's going to be at like the show singing to this, watching ACDC or something like that, or at the bar singing it, like you kind of all get to like have this moment of like, yeah, we're friends and we're bad, you know, type of thing. But it's
Hmm.
fun and it's a really good line. I think if it was anybody else and any other band trying to say that, I think it'd come off as corny. But it's ACDC and they absolutely nail it, and the vibe is just really great. It's great. So, but yeah, so the lyrics then are "See my white light flashing as I split the night. Because if good's on the left, then I'm sticking to the right." It's kind of the same thing there. It's like if good's on the left, I'm going right. Like
Yeah.
yeah, like it's just great. It's a lot of fun. I it makes me want to go to a bar and put this song on the jukebox. You know, like
Yeah.
it's awesome. So I think the pre-chorus is the same. I won't take no prisoners, won't spare no lives. Nobody's putting up a fight.
Yeah. It has the
I
same kind of melodic tendencies.
yeah. So yeah, we get back to the chorus. So let's yeah, we've already talked about the chorus. So then we get to a short little bridge before the solo. Um, let's talk about this bridge real quick because I think this bridge is brilliant. They
Yes.
already did, you know, it's very similar to the bridge into the second verse, but the guitar does a little like
Yes. Yes.
it's pretty much it.
I wanted to talk about this too. There's a couple times throughout the song where they have neat little things like that, and they're probably called bridges. I just didn't know that until today.
Mhm. Yeah,
But it's just kind of like a palate refresher, so you're not hearing the same thing a million times in 5 minutes.
yeah. No, exactly, and so yeah, it's a little 9-second bridge. One thing I wanted to point out with this guitar, with that little guitar lick, though, uh, it is super cool and really well placed because what it does is it's like not only are we kind of having this little bridge out of the chorus to like relax after the second chorus, but we're also transitioning into the guitar solo. And so it actually gets people's minds off of the vocals now. You hear that little guitar and just as a listener, when you're listening, now you're thinking, ooh, guitar. I like guitar. And I think he literally just does and then
Yeah.
the solo starts, the real solo starts. And it's just brilliant. What it made me think of is it's very similar to like when rappers are about to start their verse and they're just like, yeah, all right, let's go, you know, something like that. And it's like, it just gets the listener ready for like, okay, we are about to start. Like this new element is about to come in. And yeah, and they did that with the guitar. And then they just start this sick ass guitar solo. So it's like, you know, super cool.
Yeah, I was gonna say just kind of like it's almost like a changing of the spotlight, and so that quick little do 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 do
Exactly.
just gives it enough time for the panning of the spotlight, and then it's like, okay, spotlight's on me. Here's your solo.
Yeah, no, that is exactly what it is, and it's just really well done. They knew I'm sure they probably already had that bridge after the first chorus, like they had already decided to do that little bridge, and so when they got to that part in the second chorus, they were like, you know, yo, Angus, just do a little something there, and he just it's so simple too. It's not hard at all. It's just a but it's perfect, and so then we start this awesome super awesome guitar solo. Um, what are your
Simple
thoughts on the
too.
solo? Yes, ridiculously simple. Um,
Um, Probably something not to talk smack on my own skills. Probably could be done by me. It might take me a week or two, but I feel like I could play it.
yeah, and it's actually the funny thing is that's actually true for a lot of Angus's solos.
Yeah.
Angus wasn't a super technical guy, but he knew the musical aspect of guitar and how to make the guitar, uh, how to make it sound as musical as possible, and have that energy and the vibe, and like the vibe. They made it he made it sound have all this energy, and he didn't have to do all this crazy technical stuff to make it happen. My favorite thing about this solo is that it like deceptively builds up, like it
Yes.
deceptively builds higher and higher and higher to the, but it does it in such a way where like you don't even realize it, and then by the time like you're at the climax where they hitting the high notes, we're slamming back into the third chorus, and it's like, how did that even happen? Like that, but well, you're left thinking that solo was awesome, and now you're back in the chorus, and you're like, oh, this chorus is awesome too. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's very smooth, because Angus was almost exclusively like a pentatonic player. For those of you who don't know guitar stuff, the pentatonic scale is it is a very basic scale. It's one of the first scales you learn, but it has a lot of different applications, and so people who can use the pentatonic scale well uh, are typically some of the best guitarists in history, quite frankly, because they can take something that is relatively simple and apply it in a way that has a lot of energy and sounds really good. And Angus was a genius at that. And so this solo is almost all pentatonic, and he just builds up and builds up and builds up, and he's just kind of doing his thing, and then we get back into the chorus. So, what were you about to say something? Sorry.
Oh, no, no, no. I don't know if I was about to say something. I mean, I feel like, um, it no. Just edit that
No,
out.
no, let's keep it. We're keeping it. We'll do it live. No, actually, there is one other thing I wanted to note about this solo is the drums kind of start jamming too, uh, especially at the beginning. I think this is a really nice example of like the guitarist and the drummer are just kind of having a lot of fun and doing their thing, and doing what feels right for them. So, and that I'm gonna make a note here, like the idea of like, oh, they're just doing what feels right. Yes, that is important, but you need to have the actual skill behind it in order to apply that. And I think that's something that gets missed a lot. Just because you do something on guitar or drums and it's like, oh, that feels really good to me, it doesn't necessarily mean it sounds good. And so having like the actual skill and the experience, and you know, knowing what to do where, from just writing a lot and being a skilled player, that's a lot of times where like you can now just sort of jam, and it comes out sounding really really good. And so I think sometimes like I've talked to musicians who just think, oh, I just feel it out, there's like actually a lot of artists who quote unquote feel it out have a really strong rational understanding of the instrument and how to apply it in the song the way that they want. And so then when they start jamming, it's coming from hours and hours of practice and experience. And so in AC/DC, like using them as this example, this is their seventh album. They've been doing this for years. They've done many albums. This isn't new for them. And so they're experts at like jamming and making that jam sound great. So go back and listen to the solo section and pay attention to the drums, because they just sound super cool, super killer. Q.
I don't know that I've ever paid attention to the drums during the solo, so I'll have to pay
Yeah.
attention to those next time I listen.
Yeah, that was one of the reasons I wanted to point it out, because yeah, the drums. Well, it's the guitar solo, and the spotlight just came to the guitar. We're paying attention to the guitar, but the drums are actually doing a lot of really cool things here. So, but yeah. Anyway, that the solo is just great. There's not much more to say about it without getting too, guitar technical. But then we come back into the chorus, and so this third chorus actually, they, you know, it's pretty normal at first, but then they double it. They double the chorus. Two for the price of one. Um, yeah, which I think is super fun. And they actually start adding in a whole lot of new lyrics and ad libs and stuff, along with a small little guitar solo in the second in the doubled chorus. So
Yep.
I'm taking some water. Yep.
You're good. I don't have anything to add there. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's kind of just more copy and paste with some slight edits.
Yeah, and it's just so yeah, they're going out strong, just rocking out. Um, yeah, Hell's Bells, Satan's coming for you. Hell's Bells, he's ringing them now. Temperature is high. Hell's Bells across the sky, and then I'm gonna not say Hell's Bells a million times, but they say they're taking you down, they're dragging you under, gonna split the night. There's no way to fight. I mean, it's all just pretty. I don't want to say generic, but it's pretty standard, like just rock and roll devil stuff. So
Yeah. Rock and
yeah,
roll.
so yeah. That brings us to the outro. At 4 minutes and 44 seconds, they just start this quick little outro. Um, Again, nothing crazy, just rocking out a little bit. And then it's funny because they actually play the last, well, not exactly last notes, but they hit like the big last note at the 5 minute mark. And then they kind of just spend 12 seconds just, you know, rocking out, big rock star ending before finally he says, Hell's bells. He kind of fades out with the reverb, and that is the end of the song.
Well, it ends with the "Ba-da-da," which I think is
Oh yeah, you're
important to
right.
talk
Okay,
about.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
you're right because Hell's bells. Da-na-na. So yeah.
Um,
Um,
I don't know why, because it is kind of like I don't want to say abrupt in the sense, but it is kind of, I guess, like an abrupt, or to me, like a little bit of a jarring ending. Um, but also,
mm,
I feel like the song would be weird if it just ended with like Brian's lyrics or voice fading.
I think
Um,
it. I think it could have been cool if with just that like that little downward slope he does pitch wise, but yeah,
I th-
I think the thing is that
so.
they're holding a note out on the guitars and the drums, and
Mhm.
so before they stop playing, they're just like because they're still technically holding the strings, they're holding the note, and then they just and that's what they decided to do. I don't know.
Well, I think, and this is more so like I think like when I hear the banana personally, like okay, so our song has resolved, right? And I'm kind of like with because of that done and not and the way that it ends, it's kind of like okay, like I'm ready for what's next.
Mhm.
Um, Whereas I feel like if we had just like vocals faded into nothingness, I don't
Mhm.
know that like uh I would have personally had the same feeling. Like the done and done gets me ready for like track number two, which
Yeah, it's
is
like the bookend of the song,
yeah,
kind of. Yeah.
yeah,
No, definitely, and it's a pretty classic like rock star. On my song, on the song structure with the timestamps, I put rock star ending because it is you're holding out that big
I was
note,
gonna
and
say.
then what?
I was gonna say like live, like I'm sure that's a big thing, like the banana live in concert. I don't know. I wasn't there, Cam. You'd have to tell me.
You know,
But
I just I don't remember. I wasn't paying attention. um, Yeah, no, it is a very common thing to do live. I've done it a lot live. My bands will do that where you're holding out this note and then there's or something, and that's just how you end it. You just end on a big note. It's strong, and then the song is definitively done. Like there's no question, it's over.
yeah,
And so now you can take a second and talk and be like, "Man, I love that song, dude. It's great." Like, and then they start the next song, and it's called, and you just keep going. Um, so yeah, as far as all right, so let's just kind of in general talk about the song like as a whole real quick. Purpose wise, so something I want us to like. We don't have to spend too much time on it on this song because I think the purpose is pretty self evident. Like this is meant to be like for ACDC as writers. Um, they wrote this song to maybe show a more theatrical side of the band. Uh, to have a great intro for their album that led into the album well, to showcase their singer, to showcase the band as a whole. But from an artistic standpoint as well, like I guess the artistic side is to be more to have like this theatrical song that just is fun. It's a little dark, it's evil, and that was kind of what they were going for when they made it. The reason I'm talking about purpose specifically is because, again, getting back to like, I think I mentioned this on the first episode, but a lot of people will just listen to a song and kind of go, "Oh, I like that," or "I didn't like that," and then they don't think about it ever again. And I think that it's important to think, what was the writer like? Why did the writer make this song? And I'm not saying that you should judge a song based on the writer's intentions. Like, you should judge the art based on the art, on what it is. But I think it is important to think like, what is the reason for this song existing? Like, why would I give it my time and attention? And what is it doing for me? And so when we talk about maybe more artistic songs that get into more serious, concepts, that conversation will be a little more in depth. But for this song in particular, it's just a awesome stadium rock song. Like, that's what it is, and it's meant to be fun, and you yell it out, and it just rocks. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's kind of the purpose.
yeah. I mean, I agree. I do think I think theatrical is a really interesting word to use here because obviously I feel like theater, like in theory, is more of a visual experience, but like obviously I know even though I wasn't there that like Brian Johnson swings on this rope out into the crowd for like the bell part, and I'm like, I mean that's just dope. There's no
Oh
ways
yeah,
around it.
their show. So I saw them on I think it was the Rock and Roll Train tour, because they had this big old train bust out through the back of the stage. Um, and that was just awesome. And I think AC/DC in general is a very theatrical band. I think when we use the word theatrical, sometimes we think like that can get taken to the nth degree, But in general, for AC/DC, when I say like, okay, this song captures the more theatrical side, it doesn't mean like, oh, it's full on like show tunes, but it is the imagery. And like, going back to the first verse where they say like, rolling thunder, pouring rain, I'm coming in like a hurricane. Like, they're setting a scene, and they're setting an atmosphere, and that to me is theatrical. Versus something like Back in Black or TNT, which great songs, but they're more just about rocking. They're
Yeah,
not.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't think they set the scene quite as they don't have the same imagery as a
Yeah,
song like this.
I agree.
So yeah, and then I've just got a couple things to go through real quick. The genre, the style. I mean, this song is just rock and roll to the bone. Um, like, it is just pure rock and roll, classic rock. Like, that's it. The song structure for this, kind of like we discussed it all, but it's very basic, pretty standard song structure. Um, and that's why I wanted to talk about it. I think they nailed it in terms of like, I think it's deceptively simple song structure, because they have these little bridges, they have all these little things, and they took a lot of care with every second of the song. No part of the song feels wasted, but it's actually still a pretty long song. It's like 5 minutes. Um,
Yeah, that's like hard to do. It's hard to write a 5 minute song and not. I know I said they copy and pasted, which they did, but the edits they made in their copying and their pasting like work.
mhm. Yeah, no, exactly. Like, I, I think that, again, it's a great example of taking just the basics and applying it super well, and making it work. Because it's funny, even like when we talk about the copy and pasted section, like we're talking about the verse, pre-chorus, chorus, right? That's only 1 minute. Those three things combined is actually less than a minute. The second verse starts at 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and then the second chorus ends at 3 minutes and 24 seconds. So they only copied and pasted less than a minute. And even then, there's still different lyrics in the verse, and slightly different lyrics in the chorus. So it's not even, again, they took a lot of care with every section of the song and made sure that it stood out, and it had meaning, and it had an impact and a purpose, but it's not complicated. They didn't overthink it all. It's like, yeah, of course, of course, after a big chorus, we should have like a few seconds to just chill before we get back into the song. It's like, yeah, obviously, but when you're writing the song, that can be a tough decision to make, you know? Um, and then let's see. So yeah, moving on a little bit. Uh, yeah, the mix as well. I actually want to talk about the mix for a second too, like the audio mix. The mix is like incredible because it still holds up. I think it's like the most amazing thing. It might be remastered on Spotify or something, but in general, the drums, the guitars, the vocals, everything sounds great. I don't know if you've got any this again, that's kind of like a producer thing, but
Yeah, I mean, I agree that the audio quality sounds great.
yeah, like
uh, I
nothing
would.
sounds what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, like, yeah. I mean, I feel like there's been very few songs in my life where I've thought the production quality was really crappy, especially like an artist.
Mhm.
Um, anybody that's having a record label produce something that they're trying to make money off of, I felt like has been pretty good. The only example I can think of off the top of my head, and there's a documentary about this Lamb of God's
Mhm.
album.
Mm.
Oh crap, what's the name of the album? Uh, Hold please, googling. And they
You got
did
it?
remaster it, but even the remaster, um, they could only do so much because the audio,
Yeah,
like the files, just got like messed up. As the palace burns.
As
Um,
the Palace Burns?
yes, and they like it was this great album, and then like basically there was something
Something
that went horribly wrong with the MP3 files or something like that, and everything just came out so compressed. And even when they remastered, it's a great album. I would say it's probably one of their best albums, in my opinion.
Mhm.
Um, and then they did a remaster for I think it was the 10th or 15th anniversary of the album. But even so, with the remaster, it still isn't like I wish they would have recorded the whole thing because like that album is
Yeah.
just top tier.
I don't think I've
Um,
ever heard it. Um, I'd have to check that out. I think when it comes to mixed stuff, like, especially with older records, it's like, I always think about, like, some of Metallica's earlier records, like Ride the Lightning. I love Ride the Lightning, but I don't think that that mix has aged well.
That's that's fair. Yeah, I can get behind that, and I think they've remastered that as well. Um,
Yeah,
to
but
me,
sorry, what?
I, I was gonna say you can probably speak to that a little bit more, but to me, it's like the remastering or like then they remix things years later. I think the album's great already, and like, do I wish things were maybe a little bit crisper or cleaner? Probably, but I even feel like if we use the Ride the Lightning example, if we're
Mhm,
calling Ride the Lightning, like I don't want to whip out a scale here, but I guess I have to for this example of
mhm.
like a 7 or 8 out of 10. I don't feel like the remaster makes it a 10. It just bumps it up another point or two. You know what I'm saying? Because it's
Yeah,
still the same stuff.
I've always been kind of hesitant when it comes to remasters. Like, here's the thing, right? Like, the mixing and mastering process to me is like, it is hand in hand with the recording process. And so when you're recording, especially if you're a big band and you have some idea of what you're doing, you're recording with some level of understanding about how it's going to be mixed and mastered and sound at the end. Maybe you as a band might not know exactly what that means, but your producer absolutely should. And so when you do a remaster on like an old album or try to remix it, it's like, it doesn't. I don't know. I don't think it ever really works well. Um, the thing is when you look back at like Ride the Lightning or and Justice for All, I think is the obvious one, but where they made these kind of conscious decisions with the mix and the sound of it. The problem is like some of those decisions don't age well. So like for example, Ride the Lightning, I think the guitars sound really muddy. They're
Yeah.
awesome. The riffs and the compositions are great. But when they were recording it, what they did, they kind of did what we talked about earlier, where they recorded like 6 or 7 tracks of rhythm guitars to give it like that big sound, because that's what was normal back in the 80s. But when you compare that mix to like the Black Album mix, which has 3 tracks, and the 3 tracks, one track is in the left ear, one track is only in the right ear, and then there's another quieter track in the middle to just thicken things up. The quality, the audio quality of the rhythm guitars is infinitely better than Ride the Lightning. So, but the issue is the actual, what they did was they recorded like 6 tracks of rhythm guitars, and when you put 6 guitars on top of each other playing the same thing, no matter how precise it is, it's gonna start to blur and sound muddy. And so I think, again, like thrash metal was new, like they didn't know what was the right way to mix this. So the big compliment I want to pay to AC/DC is that even back then in 1980, they had a very clear idea of like what this song is, what it's going to sound like, what it's going to be. And when they made the mix, it still sounds fantastic. Like you could put it on a stadium, like you could play this in it is played in stadiums, and it still sounds just awesome. And it was mixed 50 years. I mean, they might have a remaster on it or something, but again, you're not going to change it's not going to change that much. They knew what they were doing when they recorded it. They knew how to capture the different sounds and everything. And it's just great. Like I just wanted, like, it's a timeless mix. It's a timeless recording. And so yeah, I think that's just like that's my big compliment to them, because it's hard. Because I mean, again, even Metallica, like Metallica is one of the biggest bands of all time, one of the best bands of all time, and even they have some rough sounding albums from the 80s that I don't think aged well, even though the compositions and the songs did. Like Master of Puppets is one of the greatest songs ever, but the mix is nowhere close to as good as anything after the Black Album, in my opinion.
I can get
So
behind that.
yeah. Okay, real quick, just a few more little items. The lyrical content and themes. Yeah, it's just a ballsy rock and roll song. I don't think that they have a whole lot of depth, but they're not supposed to, and that's kind of the point. It's supposed to be fun. You need to, when you're thinking about a song. I think another thing is like people will sometimes listen to songs and think this isn't what I want it to be, but when you look at a song, you should think, well, what is it, and what does it want to be, and what is it accomplishing that? So if you have a song that's trying to be like a big stadium rock anthem, but the lyrics are weak or depressing or something, okay, it failed at what it was trying to do. It fails. Probably not going to be as good of a song, objectively speaking. But this song knows what it is, and it kicks ass at it.
I agree. Simple,
Yep.
stupid, easy. If it
Simple,
ain't
stupid,
broke,
easy.
don't fix it.
Exactly. So yeah, final verdict. We don't need to do the score thing, but like in general, yeah, this song is awesome. It's very well made. They they obviously combed over every second of this song and made sure it flowed really well. It's a great vibe. The mix is awesome. The lyrics are fun. The guitars are great. The solo's sick. Everyone knows what they're doing, and they do it really well. Yeah. Final thoughts from you?
I think you pretty much hit the hammer, or hit the no, not hit the hammer. You hit the nail with the hammer.
The hammer. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it does its job very well,
Mhm.
and I think they were
Yeah,
very intentional with the decisions they made.
definitely. All right, cool. Um, so yeah, I think that is it. We did it, man. Almost two
Yeah,
hours. Woo!
we yeah. Well, we had to kind of do some deep dive on some other things here.
Yeah.
Um, we
Woo.
didn't talk about what song we're gonna do next. Do we know what song you want to do next, Cam?
Um, I don't. I actually have
Okay,
no clue.
that's fine.
So yeah. I think we'll figure it out as we go along. It'll be a surprise. It'll be a surprise. So yeah. Okay. Well, I think hope everyone enjoyed this episode. It's definitely this is our first time doing the deep dive. This is really the meat of the podcast. Last time was just kind of let's just talk for a little bit, but this was like let's actually get into some stuff. And I enjoyed it. Thought it was a fun discussion. We definitely,
I learned some things.
Yeah. No, it was a good time. So, all right, cool. Well, thank you guys for listening and making it to the end. What is the word, Aubrey? What are we going out
Wale.
with?
Wale.
Wale, everyone. All right.
Yeah.
Peace
Wale.
out, everybody. Wale.
Bye.